She walked with her eyes cast downward, shoulders hunched, as if she could somehow make herself invisible. The hallways of Jefferson High School were a gauntlet she had to run every day, filled with whispers, snickers, and sometimes outright taunts. Sophia Reyes was 15, painfully thin, towering over most of her classmates at 5'11", with features that hadn't yet found their harmony. Giraffe, they called her. Stick figure, alien, each word a tiny dagger that left no visible wounds but cut deeply nonetheless. The bell rang, signaling the start of another class period, another hour of trying to fold her long limbs into a desk too small, trying to blend into the background, hoping not to be noticed. As she slid into her seat in the back of the room, a crumpled note landed on her desk. She didn't need to open it to know what it contained, probably another crude drawing or insult. She tucked it into her pocket, face burning, determined not to give whoever threw it the satisfaction of seeing her reaction. What those who mocked her couldn't see was the girl who returned home each day to lose herself in fashion magazines, who kept a notebook filled with sketches of designs and runway shows, who practiced her walk in the privacy of her bedroom with a grace that contradicted her public awkwardness. They couldn't see the dreams that sustained her through the daily torment. Sophia's mother, Elena, a single parent working 2 jobs to keep them afloat, noticed the change in her once vibrant daughter. "What happened at school today?" she would ask, watching Sophia pick at her dinner. "Nothing," was always the reply, accompanied by a shrug that was meant to be casual but conveyed everything Elena needed to know. On a particularly brutal Friday, after a group of popular girls had loudly commented on her freakish appearance in the cafeteria, Sophia came home and tore down every fashion magazine cut out from her wall, every dream board she had meticulously created. Elena found her sitting amidst the scattered pieces, tears streaming silently down her face. "They're right, Mom," Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. "Look at me. I'll never be beautiful. I'm just weird." Elena sat beside her daughter, gathering the torn pages. She held up one showing a striking model with features not unlike Sophia's: high cheekbones, wide-set eyes, a statuesque frame. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Elena asked softly. "I see someone extraordinary. Those things that make them mock you now, your height, your unusual features, these are the same things that make her shine." She tapped the image of the model. "The world isn't ready for you yet, mi amor, but it will be." That night marked a turning point, not an immediate transformation. Sophia didn't walk into school on Monday radiating confidence, but a small ember of resilience had been kindled. She began to stand a little straighter. She started to look people in the eye, even when they stared back unkindly. In her junior year, a new art teacher, Ms. Ramirez, noticed Sophia's sketchbook during lunch. Instead of eating in the cafeteria, Sophia had taken to finding quiet corners to draw and dream. Miss Ramirez, a former designer who had worked briefly in New York before turning to teaching, recognized something in the lanky, quiet girl that others had missed. "These are quite good," she said, flipping through pages of fashion sketches and figures in motion. "You have an eye for line and form." Sophia mumbled a thanks, unused to praise outside of her mother's loving encouragement. "There's a summer program at the community college. Basic fashion photography and modeling. They're always looking for new faces, different faces." Ms. Ramirez wrote down the information and pressed it into Sophia's hand. "Think about it." For weeks, the paper remained folded in Sophia's drawer. The thought of putting herself forward, of inviting more scrutiny, more potential ridicule, paralyzed her. But the idea took root, watered by her mother's gentle persistence and Miss Ramirez's quiet confidence in her. "What's the worst that could happen?" Elena asked one evening. "They say no? You're already living with no." The summer program was small, underfunded, run by passionate people who believed in creating opportunities in their working-class neighborhood. The photography instructor, Marcus Chen, was a freelancer who occasionally shot for regional magazines. On the first day, when Sophia walked in tall and uncertain, he did a double take. "The camera is going to love you," he said simply, as if stating an obvious fact, like the color of the sky. Sophia didn't believe him, not at first. But in the controlled environment of the class, with instructors who saw potential where others had seen only oddity, she began to unfold. She learned how to move, how to use her height to advantage, how to transform her gangly gait into something fluid and purposeful. For the first time, her distinctive features, the sharp cheekbones, the wide-set eyes, the long neck, were described as striking rather than strange, exotic rather than alien. She learned about lighting, about angles, about the history of fashion photography and the evolution of beauty standards. She began to understand that beauty wasn't a single narrow ideal, but a vast spectrum with room for the unusual and unique. The program culminated in a small showcase. The students' photographs were displayed in a local gallery, and they organized a modest fashion show using donated clothing from area businesses. Sophia's mother sat in the front row, eyes shining with tears of pride as her daughter walked a makeshift runway with newfound poise. What no one expected was that among the small crowd of family and friends, there was a visitor from New York, a scout for a modeling agency who had grown up in the neighborhood and made a point of checking out the program whenever she was in town visiting family. Candice Jackson had seen dozens of young hopefuls over the years, most of whom blended together in her memory. But the tall girl with the distinctive features caught her attention immediately. After the show, she approached Sophia and Elena with her card. "She's young," Candice told Elena, who regarded the woman with cautious hope mixed with maternal protectiveness. "She should finish high school, but I'd like to talk about possibilities for the future. She has a look we're seeing more demand for. Editorial, high fashion." Senior year was different. The whispers still followed Sophia through the hallways, but now they carried a different tone. Word had spread about the modeling scout, though many refused to believe it. The same features that had made her a target now generated speculation. Was she really going to be a model? Had she really been discovered? Some of the very people who had tormented her now attempted to befriend her, their sudden interest transparent and insincere. Sophia navigated this new terrain with a quiet dignity that impressed even her detractors. She didn't gloat, didn't seek revenge through exclusion, but she was selective about who she allowed into her life, valuing most those few who had shown her kindness when it offered them no advantage. After graduation, with her mother's blessing, Sophia moved to New York. The reality of the modeling industry was far from the glamorous fantasy she had once pasted on her bedroom walls. It was hard work, filled with rejection and critique. For every job she booked, there were dozens of castings where she was passed over without a second glance. But she persevered. The resilience she had developed through years of schoolyard cruelty served her well in an industry known for its brutal honesty. She shared a tiny apartment with 3 other aspiring models, worked side jobs to make ends meet, and showed up to every casting with the same quiet determination that had gotten her through high school. Her breakthrough came almost 2 years into her New York life. A last-minute booking for a small designer's show during Fashion Week, someone had dropped out, and her agency sent her as a replacement. The designer, known for avant-garde concepts and an appreciation for unconventional beauty, took one look at Sophia and redesigned the closing look specifically for her. As she walked the runway, the distinctive features that had once been her burden transformed her into a standout. Photographers' flashes captured her unique profile, her graceful stride, her serene expression that hinted at a depth beyond the surface. The next day, her face appeared in coverage of the show. Within a week, requests began coming. Within a month, she was booked for her first international show in Paris. Elena flew to Paris to see her daughter walk for a renowned French fashion house. Sitting in the audience, watching Sophia command the runway with ethereal confidence, she remembered the broken girl surrounded by torn magazine pages. Now, those same magazines featured her daughter's face, Success didn't happen overnight. It was built gradually, show by show, campaign by campaign. Sophia developed a reputation, not just for her distinctive look, but for her professionalism, her humility, her quiet strength. Designers appreciated that she wore their creations with dignity, embodying their artistic vision rather than overshadowing it with ego. 3 years into her career, during an interview with a major fashion publication, the journalist asked about her path to success. "I understand you were discovered at a community program. That's unusual in this industry. Was modeling always your dream?" Sophia paused, considering how much of her story to share. The vulnerability of truth versus the protection of a sanitized narrative. "Yes and no," she finally said. "I loved fashion from a young age, but I didn't see a place for myself in it. I didn't look like the girls in the magazines. At least that's what I was told." Repeatedly. "Who told you that?" the journalist asked. "Classmates, mostly. I was bullied pretty severely throughout school for the way I looked. Too tall, too thin, features too unusual." She smiled slightly. "All the things that I get paid for now." The story ran with the headline, "Ridiculed to Runway: How Bullying Shaped a Supermodel's Resilience." The article detailed Sophia's journey from outcast to icon, emphasizing not the pain, but the transformation. The piece went viral, generating discussions about beauty standards, bullying, and resilience. Sophia began receiving messages from young people facing similar struggles, seeing in her story a beacon of possibility for their own futures. What had begun as a personal triumph expanded into something larger. Sophia established a foundation that funded arts programs in underserved communities, with a particular focus on helping young people find confidence through creative expression. She returned to her old high school, not for revenge or validation, but to speak about perseverance and self-worth. Some of her former tormentors reached out over the years, some with genuine remorse, others seeking to attach themselves to her success. Sophia met these overtures with neither resentment nor eager forgiveness, but with a measured grace that acknowledged the past while refusing to be defined by it. On the 10th anniversary of her first major campaign, a documentary filmmaker approached her about telling her story. The resulting film followed her return to her hometown, her visits with Ms. Ramirez, now retired but still mentoring young artists, and her work with teenagers struggling with self-image and bullying. In one poignant scene, Sophia sat with a group of high school students, listening as they shared their experiences of feeling different, excluded, mocked for standing out. "I wish I could tell you it doesn't hurt," she told them, her voice gentle but firm. "It does. I still carry those scars. But I want you to understand something crucial. The very things that make you targets now may be your greatest strengths later." She gestured to her face, her frame, once sources of shame, now her professional assets. More importantly, though, your worth isn't determined by whether your appearance fits a particular mold. The journey I'm most proud of isn't from bullied teen to magazine cover. It's from someone who believed what others said about her, to someone who defined herself. The documentary, like the magazine article years before, struck a chord. It was screened in schools across the country, opening discussions about the long-term damage of bullying and the narrow beauty standards that fuel it. As her career evolved, Sophia became increasingly selective about her projects, prioritizing those that championed diversity and positive messaging. She collaborated with designers who were expanding the boundaries of beauty, photographers who sought to capture authenticity rather than perfection, and brands committed to ethical practices. In her mid-30s, having walked runways in every major fashion capital and graced countless magazine covers, Sophia began transitioning to the other side of the industry. She studied design formally, building on the sketches she had created as a lonely teenager, and launched a small, sustainable fashion line that celebrated individuality. At the launch event, Elena, now retired and living comfortably thanks to her daughter's success, beamed with pride as journalists praised the collection's inclusive vision. I always knew she was extraordinary, Elena told one reporter, her eyes misting with emotion. The world just needed time to catch up. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned and the excitement ebbed, Sophia found a quiet moment with her mother. They stood together, looking at the collection displayed around them. Physical manifestations of dreams once drawn in a bedroom sanctuary while tears dried on young cheeks. Do you ever think about them? Elena asked softly. The ones who were cruel to you? Sophia considered the question carefully. Not with anger anymore, she said finally. Sometimes I wonder if they needed kindness themselves. If they were fighting their own battles I couldn't see. She touched one of her designs, a flowing piece that celebrated rather than concealed the body's natural lines. But mostly I'm grateful, she continued, not for the pain, but for what it taught me about resilience, about defining beauty for myself, about the importance of seeing people truly, seeing them for who they are, not who we expect them to be. The story of Sophia Reyes, from ridiculed schoolgirl to international runway icon to advocate and designer, isn't simply a tale of conventional success emerging from adversity. It's a testament to the power of redefining narratives, of transforming wounds into wisdom, of creating spaces for others to be seen and celebrated in their uniqueness. In industry circles, she became known as much for her mentorship of young models as for her own accomplishments, particularly taking under her wing those with unconventional looks who reminded her of herself. Beauty isn't just what's symmetrical or expected, she often told them. It's what's distinctive, what's authentic, what tells a story. The journey from the back of a classroom, head down and spirit crushed, to commanding runways and reshaping beauty standards wasn't linear or simple. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, echoes of old insecurities that sometimes resurfaced in the face of criticism or rejection. But with each step, each choice to persist despite fear, the shy girl who once believed she was fundamentally flawed built herself into a woman who understood that standing out, being undeniably, unapologetically herself, was not her weakness, but her greatest strength. And perhaps that is the most powerful transformation of all. Not the external validation of an industry that finally recognized her unique beauty, but the internal revolution that allowed her to recognize it first in herself, and then fight to expand the world's definition of what beauty could be. In the final scene of the documentary, Sophia returned to the beach near her childhood home. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the sand, she moved with the fluid grace that had become her signature on runways around the world. The narrator, Sophia herself, spoke over these images. We all contain multitudes: the scared girl, the determined woman, the public figure, the private soul. My journey isn't exceptional because I overcame bullying to find success. It's meaningful because I learned that the world's perception doesn't define my reality. That lesson belongs to everyone, whether they ever set foot on a runway or not. We are all, in our own way, walking toward becoming fully ourselves. That's the real catwalk that matters. Subscribe and see you in the next video.